Hi, I'm Jeff Lowe of Asian Sky Media, here to give you hopefully a tantalizing overview of our most recent business jet fleet report for year-end 2021 for the Asia Pacific region. Before we get into, if you will, the data, just a reminder regarding methodology. The fleet report looks at the installed fleet in the Asia Pacific region. So aircraft that are based out here, aircraft that predominantly operate in this region. If the ownership is in Asia, but the aircraft is based overseas, we don't include it in our analysis. So if you're looking for a database of Asian aircraft owners globally, this is not what you'll find in our report. It is the installed fleet in the Asia Pacific region. We've chosen it this way because it's an accurate, measurable fleet on a yearly basis. This year's report probably had a few surprises in that, well, first of all, the market contracted in 2021. This was the first time it had done that. The Asia Pacific region has always been renowned for its, high growth, but certainly not in 2021. The fleet contracted 1.1%, as I mentioned, which was a first. The other thing that seemed to happen was the region was turned upside down, in that in 2020, whereas the leading market growth-wise was mainland China, this year it's the bottom of the list. And those that were at the bottom before, the mature markets like Japan and New Zealand, well, they're on the top this year for 2021. So certainly we saw this reversal. As mentioned, Japan and New Zealand were the top growth markets, which is unusual in itself. Those are mature markets. Southeast Asia, whereas a lot of us expected that a lot of the aircraft were moving south from Northern Asia, this was not the case actually. The aircraft were either exiting the market entirely or certainly going to other regions. So Southeast Asia was not the big gainer that we thought it was. Probably also, which was a bit of a surprise, was we all expected mainland China to be, if you will, terrible, but in fact it wasn't as bad as we expected. And this was primarily because it did take in a significant number of new aircraft as well, which offsetted the pre-owned departures. So as you can see, Japan, New Zealand were the top gainers, and if you will, the top losers were mainland China and Southeast Asia. As you would expect with mature markets, we saw a lot of aircraft being added in the light and very light categories also for a first time. And so this, as what you want to expect, led to Textron having a very good year for 2021. Textron saw its fleet size add 17 net aircraft, so almost a 6% growth, and it just was not the usual case. Normally we talk about the big three, if you will, the Bombardiers, the Gulfstreams, and the Falcons, but 2021 was owned by Textron. And as mentioned, the light and very light categories is where we saw the most significant growth and additions. Normally, as I said, we would see the long-range category being the big contributor. As we all know, the Asia Pacific region has always favored big cabin, long-range aircraft. But again, for the first time since we've started doing the report, we saw the long-range category decline. And so it dropped 3%, lost a net 12 aircraft. So that was a first. The large category we've seen, if you will, sliding for the last couple of years, and that certainly continued. Looking at just new aircraft, Bombardier was the big winner. With Gulfstream and Falcon, if you will, yet to bring to the market in any significant numbers their new large cabin long-range airplanes, Bombardier had the market to themselves with the Global 7500 and the Global 6500, and they certainly took advantage of that by being the big gainer when it came to new deliveries in 2021. The report always looks at dollars, not just units as well. And so we do take a look at the transactions and the volume of business being generated in the region. It's always an interesting number for everyone that takes an interest in this region. And so what we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years is the percentage of new aircraft diminishing and the number of pre-owned transactions increasing. And so certainly 2021 was no exception. Continuing a trend that we had started to see in 2019, the number of new aircraft transactions continue to drop. Over the last 3 years, the value of those contractions have dropped 35%. But new pre-owned aircraft have increased over that same time period. So we've seen an increase in value in pre-owned transactions over the last 3 years of 44%. When you take the new and the pre-owned transactions all together, the market in the Asia Pacific region is about $4 billion. The significance of that this year is it has bounced back. The market had contracted dollar-wise in 2020, but we saw it increase this year by 7.5%. So when you look at the market, as I said, it's about a $4 billion market out here in the Asia Pacific region. One of the most interesting aspects, certainly of the report, is always when it comes to the operators, and there's always a bit of a story to be told here as well. The top 10 is dominated by Chinese operators. China has the largest fleet, so it's not too surprised. But the fates of the Chinese operators really depended on which ones served the domestic market and which one serves the international market. So when you look at the table, top of the list again was Sinojet, and then also BA and Deerjet, followed by TAG and Jet Aviation. But the Sinojets and the BAs and Deerjets, they were able pretty much to maintain the same fleet size that they had in last year's report. And that, as you can imagine, was due to the recovery much sooner in the domestic Chinese market. TAG and Jet did not have such a great year in that they saw a lot of aircraft leaving their fleets. But again, that was more a function of they're not China-based. They are based throughout the Asia-Pacific region, and so they saw significantly more aircraft leaving their fleets, 6-7%. So lots of information in the reports, as always. I've just touched on a few of them. To get the full report, please go to our website, www.asianskymedia.com, and there you can either read the report or download it. Thank you very much.